Okay, welcome everyone this evening to our virtual closing reception for the exhibition Secret Language of Intimacy. My name is Amanda Poss. I'm the Gallery Director of Gallery 221 at HCC Dale Mabry Campus. And it is my great pleasure to be the host and moderator for tonight's event. A couple quick things about Zoom, though I imagine many of you are a little more familiar with it now than we were several months ago. We are recording this event, as you see by the blinking red light there. And if you want to know when we will make this recording available, all you need to do is simply subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our handle is Gallery221HCC, very simple. As soon as you subscribe, you'll know immediately when we have any new content available like tonight's recording. Another thing you might have noticed is that everyone is muted. This is not because we don't want to hear from you, far from it. We just don't want to disrupt from the discussion. And instead, we encourage you to say hello, give a shout out to our artists. I love hearing from you guys. And also, importantly, to ask questions along the way. Leave comments about what you're seeing and what you're hearing. We will have some time tonight for Q&A. So we will be looking at the comments section, which is being monitored by our student worker, Mark Miller. And we will address all the comments, all the questions that we can in the time we have left in the order in which they appear. Before I introduce our artists for this evening, I want to introduce a very special person, Amy Bousquet. So Amy, if you're here, go ahead and unmute. Amy is the Dean for the Associate in Arts at the Dale Mabry Campus, and we're very excited to hear a few words from her. So Amy, go ahead.
Thank you, Amanda. First of all, welcome everyone. On behalf of Dr. Witt and the entire Dale Mabry Campus Humanities Division, I'd like to welcome you all to this very special virtual exhibit reception. You know, I was telling Amanda, I had some time to go up and kind of walk around and read and take in the words and the images, and it was such a profound experience. So I'm really excited to share this with you this evening. And as I was walking around and reading the words and kind of looking at the images and just having this very deep moment by myself, one of the things that I realized is, in a time where we are all socially distancing, the fact that we have this reminder of what makes us human, and the fact that we need one another. You know, yes, we have to be 6 feet away and wearing masks, but when this is all over, you know, we will celebrate once again. And it's the fact that what makes us human, and I think that that's really the essence of this wonderful exhibit that I'm so proud to have on our campus. And it's the fact that it really celebrates all that makes us human and who we are. And so with that, I can't wait to hear from the artists themselves. So again, welcome. And I'm very proud to have this exhibit on our campus and to be here tonight with you all. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. I couldn't have said it any better myself. I have a few other words, of course, before I introduce our artists. These kinds of events take a lot of hands, whether we're doing them face-to-face or virtually. So I want to give a special recognition to our HCC Dale Mabry Campus Student Government Association. They are instrumental in supporting all of our exhibitions and events throughout the year. So thank you so much, SGA. My gratitude also goes to people like Dean Amy Bousquet, who you just heard from, and also our campus president, Dr. Alan Witt. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to have such a robust and diverse amount of art exhibitions throughout the year. So thank you so much. I'm also personally extremely grateful for these next folks. My Gallery 221 team and a special volunteer tonight. So we have Emiliano Sedekasi, my gallery assistant, Mark Miller, who's our student worker, and also Sabrina Douglas, an HCC student and volunteer tonight. They're all working behind the scenes, leaving comments, doing the screen shares, keeping an eye on attendees, letting you in from the waiting room. So thank you all so much for all of your support in tonight's event and making all of our exhibitions possible. Finally, my gratitude to our artists, of course, Saumitra, Kevin. It has been really a pleasure working with you guys from start to finish, from conceptualizing this exhibition, getting it ready, having it delayed due to COVID, and then finally having it in our space at the start of the fall term, and now coming to a close where we can celebrate all of your efforts this far. All right, so remember, audience members, you can ask questions, leave comments at any time in the chat. And with that, I would like our artists, Saumitra and Kevin, to go ahead and unmute themselves and start sharing their video. Hi, Saumitra. Oh, I think you're still muted. And Kevin, are you there as well?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, hello. So let's start with introductions. Whichever one of you would like to go first, go ahead and share with our audience a little information about your education and your background and about your art.
Saumitra, would you like to go first? No, he's still muted.
Okay.
Would you like to go first, Saumitra?
Okay, I'll go first. Hi everyone, my name is Saumitra Chandratreya. I'm a fiber installation artist. I live in St. Petersburg. I have my studio here as well. I was born in Mumbai. I studied at the Art Institute of Chicago before moving to Tampa Bay. And I moved to Tampa Bay in 2017. Before doing my master's at the Art Institute of Chicago, I studied at Srishti Institute of Art, Design and Technology in Bangalore in India, where I studied textile design. And I studied Master of Design for Fashion, Body and Garment at the Art Institute of Chicago.
Thank you, Saumitra. Go ahead, Kevin, whenever you're ready.
Well, hi everyone. And first of all, thank you, Amy, for that wonderful comment about the installation being something that celebrates us all being human. I mean, thank you so much for that. I'll never forget that. When people ask me in Florida, probably everyone, so where are you from? Because normally most people are not from Florida. And I have to say that I was born in the South Bronx, lived in New York, New Jersey, Northern Illinois, upstate New York, Milwaukee, Southern California, western suburbs of Chicago, Sanibel, Northport, and Venice. So I've gotten around, and I think I lost them. But in that process, I ended up going to school at Marquette University in Milwaukee and got my degree in theater. And I say I got my master's degree in character analysis working as a bartender at Walski's Tavern in Milwaukee. So definitely, if you know anything about working in a bar or a restaurant, you get to know a lot about people. And that has definitely worked to affect the poetry I write. And after that, I ended up living in Chicago, worked at the Royal George Theater, and was the company manager for the first national tour of Angels in America, and also for Forever Plaid, which ran for 5 years, and they were both award-winning, of course. Also in Chicago, I helped reopen the Oriental Theater with their massive restructuring and just restoring it. That was a great experience as well. And then finally moving to Florida, where I always wanted to live, I lived on Sanibel and was the general manager at the Pirate Playhouse. That was a rather sad experience because they really had to file Chapter 11 and they didn't. And so I left, and 3 years later they had to close. So that was kind of a sad experience. But I stayed in Florida because I love Florida. And I've been writing since I was 14. And of course, the first poems were always love poems. And since then, I've created my company called Leprechaun Inc. And there's a website for that, www.leprechaun.com. I've published 3 books. 2 of them are the poetry series, The Wandering Crane, Volume 1 and 2. Also a business book called Turning Up the Light, 4 Steps to Brighter Management. And then along the way, I kind of like blended my theater background and my artistic background and created what's called Field of Poetry. And that is a field of literal 44 yellow yard signs with my original poetry on them. Thank you, Emiliano. And I created that, and that was the beginning of this whole process of bringing poetry into more visualization for the community, because poetry is usually something that's not really thought of too often and not very understood. So did that, and I've done that around the country, was invited to the largest art festival in the world to participate, and brought it to Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I continue working on other interests, which I'm a Reiki Master, a Rune Master. I do chakra rebalancing, and I'm very spiritual oriented, and that's probably why my poetry is so clearly soulful and spiritual. So I keep working on that. So thank you.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Saumitra. The first question is really a simple one. How did your collaboration begin?
Saumitra, I think you should answer that one.
Oh, maybe you go ahead, Kevin, and we'll work to get
Okay, because he's
Saumitra
still
back.
muted. Because it was Saumitra who contacted me, because he had copies of my poetry books, and he was definitely connected with them, and chose actually 20 poems to do. And I was thrilled, because I just love Saumitra's work, and so it was his action that started the ball rolling. So I think, Saumitra, you're unmuted now. Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I had shown some work at the gallery in Fort Lauderdale, and they had kind of a show where they wanted some collaborative work, and so I approached Kevin to ask him if he can collaborate with me using his poetry and illustrating it with my style. And actually, that's how we began, because I had read some of his poetry and I really liked it, and I thought we could work really well together.
Well, thank you for explaining a little bit about how you two came together, because I think that was a point a lot of our students that have been coming to see the show have been asking, how someone who works in language and words came up with this collaboration with a visual artist. So speaking of your respective media, Saumitra, you with your visual art and fiber, and Kevin with poetry, both of you use these different approaches to art making to meditate upon this theme of intimacy. I think personally, I especially enjoy how the title hints at this as a secret language, which implies something about our inner lives and how this is something we experience in both internal and in external ways. So what drew you to this theme of intimacy for the show and with your collaboration?
Well, if I may, intimacy, whenever I used to talk about that, the first thing that came to people's minds was sex. But we know that, that's not what intimacy is necessarily about. There are degrees of intimacy, from the people you meet at the grocery store, the cashier. You do have some sort of intimate relationship with them. It may be very shallow, but it's very intimate. But when you get to some of the things the poems that are there in the installation, a lot of that is language that you and the other person you're having a relationship with, you are the only two that know what's going on between the relationship, and no one else does. They will never understand. No matter how much you try to explain it to them, they won't understand. So that's why it's so secret, because it's just a one-on-one conversation, and no one else will ever really hear about it and know about it. But but as you can tell by the poetry, we've all experienced it, but just it's still between two people.
Yeah, I also really like the fact that the kind of, I'm always fascinated by language, and how whenever I read something, it's always visual for me, because I think in visual terms. And so it was very interesting for me to kind of marry Kevin's language with my illustrations. And in doing so, I also wanted to kind of use from the poems in my illustrations. So So as we kind of explore the process more, we can highlight some of those illustrations where I have used some words from the points on the illustrations, and then some illustrations that are completely abstract. And I like this kind of dance between something that's completely visual and something that has like so many different feelings and emotions attached to it.
And I think, I'm sorry, I think, Saumitra, I think we talked about before about how the emotions are so intangible. And like an emotion that we feel is so intangible, it is really hard for a lot of people to express it. And in Western culture especially, sometimes we're repressed to express it. So it's very difficult to take that intangible and not only turn it into a text so that you can read and rationalize in your head, but then also for you to actually create an image that is able to create a feeling without any text, to create the same intangible into some other dimension of understanding and communication.
So speaking of that, with the abstract imagery, I'm going to turn it back over to Saumitra here for this next question. Referring back to your work as an artist, I've been following your work for a little while now, and you've used so many different materials to make your individual pieces and also these diverse installations, and yet you refer to yourself as a fiber artist, which I found really interesting. And we see that, of course, for this show. In your deft use of fabric really creates this lovely ethereal and almost ephemeral quality, a little bit like what Kevin was just referring to, with the way each set of fabric panels hangs suspended from the ceiling with these near invisible threads. So I wanted to ask what draws you as an artist to the use of fiber into creating installations or environments like the one we see in the show?
It's really funny because fiber was always a taboo word in fine art, where you couldn't really say that you are a fiber artist.
Oh, absolutely.
You could only say that you are a fine visual artist, and then you could kind of sneak in fiber here and there. I think it's due to kind of the close relationship that fiber has with craft and craft traditions, coming from India, where craft traditions are so prevalent, they're so beautiful, and they're so part of every day, that when I was growing up, I kind of saw them as integral to my identity. Because I saw my mother and my grandmother wear these beautiful fabrics and saris, and I was always fascinated by whoever created them, or like the weaver or the printer or the person who dyed them that intricately, and it all kind of drew me to fiber as kind of a medium, and for me, fiber can exist in so many different ways that I want to kind of anchor my arts practice in fiber, and then I kind of use all these other materials to give meaning to my art. So I use a lot of found objects with fiber, but everything is kind of rooted in that.
I love that you talk about it as this thing that we have in an intimate relationship, as it were, right? Fiber is something that we put on our clothes every day, right? Everyone grabs a blanket, and
Right.
I like that you're translating that now through fine art. Kevin, now I'm going to bounce it over to you. So we've talked about Saumitra and his medium. For you, I would like to highlight for our audience that there is this remarkable span in terms of time for the poems that you've contributed for the show. Some of the poetry dates back to the 1980s, for instance. And you've mentioned how some are written for friends, while others mark significant moments in your own life. Yet, while they are by nature very personal and often specific, they can resonate with readers, as we saw with students who came to see the show, in very different ways and be broadly interpreted. One, for example, that I'd like to highlight is a poem you wrote for a friend's wedding called "I Will Not Quit You." I'd love for you to share that poem with us and the story behind it, explaining how it speaks to not just that specific instance, but a wide array of social and cultural issues.
Did you want me to read it first?
Yes, please.
Okay. It's called I Will Not Quit You. For 30 plus years I've known you. For 30 plus years I've loved you. For 30 plus years they said no. For 30 plus years they said sin. For 30 plus years I would not quit you. For 30 plus years I gave you my all. For 30 plus years God has blessed us. For 30 plus years more I will love you. And this I wrote this for my two friends. They've been living. They're like in their 60s and 70s, and they've been living together for 30 plus years. And now it's almost 40, or it is 40, I think. But because even though this was written 2015, which is the latest one in the installation, the first one was written in 1980, which is also a gay-themed poem about not being able to be with your lover because it was not accepted. Well, these guys were able to stay together for 30 plus years, and I used the metaphor of Brokeback Mountain, of course, because it was the line "I will not quit you." It was in there, and I wanted to highlight the fact that they finally were able to get married. And they've been waiting for 30 plus years to do it, no matter what people said and how difficult it was, even though it was considered a sin, even though until 1974, it was a mental disease. And so that was really, really important for me. And I do like that. And I love Saumitra's design for this. I really do. I really do. So thank you, Saumitra, for that. And I think, if I may add, my process that I go through is I try to be as simple as possible when I write the poetry and use as few words as possible so that I really get to the meat of it and where, what is the real meaning I'm trying to get to that actually touches that emotion, that touches the common soul. And that's how I come about.
When we were talking to students, one group in particular that was brought by Professor Brian Schuler, there was a student who was saying how they thought about throughout history all the different times and ways in which people couldn't be together. Society saying, and I think you added in for class, or maybe they have different color skin or have a different religion. And I think that's one of the ways that your poetry and that repetition of the images, Saumitra, that you added for the layer behind it is so powerful and can resonate in so many different ways, even without knowing that story. It speaks to the persistence of love and relationships in the face of often overwhelming odds, right?
Yeah. When I was conceptualizing the illustration for this poem, I was really overwhelmed by the emotions in it, because to be with someone for 30 plus years, but you can't legalize it, and it was really heartbreaking to also, it's beautiful at the same time and heartbreaking at the same time. And so I really wanted to kind of highlight that they haven't quit each other. And I wanted to keep it black and white because there is a real power to kind of repetition of "I will not quit you." And so I did not want to add any color to it, because I often find that, whenever you kind of have two colors, they kind of take away from it. And so I wanted to keep it very simple. I wanted it to be about those words and how impactful they are.
And this is a nice bridge to our next comment, because I know you wanted to talk about this one in the words and imagery as we are, but also a couple others, in particular, volcano and disappointment. So go ahead and discuss those for the relationship and the interaction between the abstract imagery and the text.
And so like I was saying before, when I was reading Kevin's poems, I found that, the way my process went about it was that I would doodle my kind of first thoughts about those poems, and then from there I would kind of illustrate them, like some of those thoughts. And as I was doing it, I kind of saw that there were some poems that I wanted to use the actual text from the poem as the illustration. And then there was some where I wanted to do only abstract imagery. And so Volcano is one of them, where it's a completely abstract imagery. I was kind of thinking of volcano as in like a violent kind of eruption, also, something that essentially destroys everything in its way, the lava. And so I wanted to have an image that was really energetic, that was really bright, powerful, that really also that was also really attractive in a way, because I think that beauty kind of attracts everything, and this poem kind of has like a lot of sensuality to it. And so I wanted to make this as like only an abstract image, as opposed to Disappointment, which has a very literal kind of translation, where I created this beautiful floral pattern, and then I put some kind of ink blots on it to essentially to essentially destroy its beauty, or kind of literally disappoint someone who might look at it and would be kind of disappointed that oh, like, this beautiful pattern was destroyed. And then like I said, for I Will Not Quit You, I really wanted to focus on the words from the poem itself, because they are so impactful and so powerful.
There was a lot of back and forth between you two in the selection of what kind of images would accompany Kevin's poem. So Kevin, I wonder if you can also speak from your perspective what that process was like, relating Saumitra's abstract images to your poems.
Well, first of all, because I have a theater background, I understand the collaborative nature of art. And because I took the human emotion, the intangible, and put it into a tangible, and then he took my interpretation and my transcription of that emotion and took that and created his own image of it. I kind of gave him free rein, but he was kind enough to offer me some things to look at to see what I thought. And I would tell him which one was my favorite one, which was my not favorite one, but I would always let him have the final say, because that's his image, it's his art, and it's his interpretation of my work. So it was really kind of a fun process to watch. There's some, you're seeing now, some of the pieces that he did that weren't necessarily chosen for this installation, but they were all great. And so it was really kind of fun that we got to talk about it and do a real collaboration.
So another thing I would like to draw out for our audience is the way that you guys approached the installation of the exhibition, which you guys had a lot of thought beforehand about how the viewers would walk through and experience all the poems and the images that they're going to see. So Emiliana, if you could put up some of the images of the install. In the show, viewers can interact with each pairing of abstract imagery and poetry in two different ways. One, the small shadow boxes like you see here, and two, the larger hanging panels. And the large panels move forward in a linear progression, whereas the shadow boxes were installed in reverse order. I love this for so many different reasons. For example, when you're at the beginning, you're also simultaneously at the end. And when you're at the end, you're simultaneously at the beginning. It subverts any notion or implication of a grand narrative and creates this subtle decentering that's actually quite enjoyable as you kind of find your way and meander through the exhibition. And at the same time, that also gives you as a viewer the chance to discover and encounter these twice. And Kevin, I know you've mentioned too before that there's things in multiple readings of the poems that emerge at different times. And so you guys allow for that chance of return and rediscovery just through the installation. So I wanted you guys to talk a little bit about this arrangement and why you wanted to include from the onset these two different scales for each piece.
Well, I'll let Saumitra answer that because that was his inspiration.
Yeah, so when we were thinking of this project and kind of what form we wanted the installation to take, we were kind of thinking of a labyrinth or kind of like a hurricane, because we both had this idea of how relationships never really die out. They kind of change their form, or they kind of change how they are enacted, but they never, like there is no end to a relationship. You kind of change the kind of relationship it is. And so when I was designing the exhibition at Gallery 221, I really wanted to keep that kind of initial thought about the form in mind. And as I was designing it, I created these clusters that you see, where you can kind of, see more than one panel at a time, the bigger panel. And so I wanted to, so I kind of placed them first on the drawing, and then after that, I kind of started adding the shadow boxes. And I was very conscious of the fact that I did not want the large panel of one poem to have the shadow box next to it that was the same poem, because I wanted the viewers to kind of have some distance between the larger panels and the smaller shadow boxes. And I really like the fact that it creates this back and forth. It creates like this this almost infinity of you meandering through the show, because you're like Amanda, you said, you are at the end and at the beginning at the same time. And I really like the fact that we were able to achieve that.
Well, and with the shifts of scale too, I remember Kevin mentioning how it imparts the way our emotion at times can feel small and intimate and kind of deep and personal, and other times they're really big, and I think Saumitra, you added sometimes even larger than life. So could you guys elaborate a little bit more about that as well?
I do like, I really like that aspect of it, because not only is our expression of intimacy sometimes very loud and bold, and sometimes very quiet and even repressed. So even with the same sort of emotion with different people, it can take on different forms. So I really like what Saumitra did about that, and makes it work really well. And also when you're reading poetry, a lot of times you have to read it more than once before it really sinks in. And then also reading it out loud makes it even better, because then you get the rhythm with it. And that's why we also added the audio to it. And I hope everyone gets a chance to hear the audio while they're walking around the exhibit. Of course, they did, hopefully they did. And I think that worked really, really well. And it also, the shadow box ones made it even more subtle, because of the subtleness of the designs behind it. Whereas the larger ones, you could see the designs, the different interpretations of the same emotion much easier. So it was just great. It was a great inspiration.
As we're winding down, we have a couple more questions, and I want to remind our audience that you can ask anything of our artists. They're very friendly, as you see, and eager to answer any questions you might have, or respond to any comments you have about the show. So the next thing I want to discuss came from actually Emiliano, who's working behind the scenes, connecting the show to our time. So 2020 is such an unprecedented time. I don't think I need to explain this in detail to everybody here. With the health crisis, coronavirus, this has really impacted the way we relate to one another, interact, form relationships. And I just think about the turbulence of what we see on the news. And even for me, the last week has been just kind of a roller coaster. So in what ways has all of this 2020 changed the way that we relate and be intimate, or what ways do you see this as proving intimacy and human connection as enduring and resilient?
So when I remember talking to Kevin when we were finally installing the show, and we both said it's kind of an interesting time to do this show about relationships, when a lot of the relationships that we already had before kind of we went into stay-at-home orders, is that some of them are taxed and some of them have found new meaning, because I don't think, like, kind of, two people don't spend as much time together as like they have started spending because of COVID, because we are all home all the time, and so that can have both an adverse effect on relationship, because the two people aren't, they're not used to being together so much. But at the same time, they can be really wonderful, because you discover small quirks between two people that you may not have seen before, or and it's so interesting because I have kind of noticed that we need human connection, like in whichever form that we can get it, right? I mean, this reception is one of the examples of how, like, we are trying to have like connection to fellow human beings and kind of, like our groups and communities, because we need it as kind of thinking beings, and we like interacting with people, and so I find it really amusing that kind of how this all kind of came together.
And I there's a couple of things I'd like to add. One is the irony of the installation being about intimacy, and no one can actually be there because
Well, 6 feet apart in small groups. Yeah.
rather ironic. But it also created a new inspiration for us to do something about that, to create relationships without being close. But also, what I think this whole COVID thing has done, it has forced us to decide who has priority in our lives when it comes to relationships, and it makes us maybe be more grateful for those relationships, and also make those relationships more strong, because we realize, oh my God, I've been ignoring you for how many months, and now I'm sorry, I need you. So I think that's actually really good. We find out what's important in our lives when it comes to our relationships and intimacy.
Absolutely. A lot of the things that we took for granted, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is another sort of simple question, but what's next for you both? Sort of simple, right?
Go ahead.
So actually, with regards to the show, we are going to take the show and show it at Studios at 620 in St. Petersburg in March 2021. And personally, I will be doing, I'm actually doing this interesting workshop in St. Pete that's arranged by World Cafe, and it trains different people from kind of different walks of lives to in kind of the art of conversation and conversational leadership to solve issues. And a lot of my art is politically oriented, and so I'm really excited to kind of marry the two.
And beyond Gallery 620 in St. Pete, we're hoping to propose bringing a much larger installation, because this installation is only 12 of the 20 poems, and some of the poems are longer, so we hope to have horizontal banners, like let's say 3 horizontal banners for one for each stanza. So it also gives some diversity to the installation itself. And there's 20 poems in all, so in all it could be like 48 pairs of banners, which would be stupendous. So the idea is to be able to send proposals to different places around the country, even around the world, to have us bring it to them to share what we started. And for me personally, I've got some books in the hopper that I still want to complete and finish writing. I'm working on my spiritual healing and energy healing work, and want to do some books and essays and blogs about that. So going forward, and then Saumitra and I may still be working on some other stuff too. We'll see, I hope.
I hope so as well. And for those of you who don't know, Kevin and Saumitra created a website for the exhibition and the poetry. So we'll be playing Kevin's reading of some of them at the very, very end, but you can check back in with secretlanguageofintimacy.com, very simple, easy to remember, and see how the show evolves. I'm really looking forward to seeing it as an expanded version of what we had in Gallery 3. So now I would like to open it up to questions and comments from the audience. So Mark, go ahead and unmute, and when you're ready, let us know what our first question is from the audience.
Hello. First, we have a comment from Lynn. She says, love the juxtaposition of neighboring panels on the columns and the meditative arrangement of the shadow boxes, a very effective shifting of focus. Also, we have a question here from Suzanne. She says, I love the doubling of the works and scale shifts. Did you find that viewers move back and forward to absorb?
Well, I'll take that, if I may. I brought, because it's hard for us to say that because we're not always there all the time. That might be a good question for Amanda, but the people that I brought there for the installation, they did. They went close because they wanted to see what kind of fabric it is. They liked the fact that there was space in between that they could look between. They like to be able to go back, step back and get a bigger view of it. And also the smaller ones, they could actually get really close and examine how it was created. So yes, it did happen that way. I'm not sure what Amanda's experience was when she was there with guests.
Yeah, I think what you highlighted is something we even found ourselves doing when we were sharing promotional images and videos of the show. You just are sort of drawn after you stand and look at it dead on. You want to peek in the middle, like there's something secret there. Right, secret language. But yeah, but it's like there was something hidden from view. And so like the movement of a viewer's body through the space was really interesting to watch. Something that we noticed as we saw other people walk through and as we were walking through as well is how the pieces actually react to your body, because they're so delicately hung. Little air currents in the room would make them sway and breathe. And if you walked by fairly closely, they would move and sway and react. So not only are you as a viewer kind of moving in and out and looking from side to side, but I loved how that added to the sense that they were sort of alive and breathing and reacting to the people in space. And it changed based on who was there, how close they were to the piece and so on. So it's a very smart question to ask about the viewer's body, because I think that relates a lot to the experience of the show. So thank you, Suzanne, and thank you, Lynn, for that comment. Mark, go ahead.
You said you were talking about how you liked how it breathed, and I remember you said that, and it's just like any relationship is a living, breathing, and just keeps growing, close, far, it never stops, just like Saumitra was kind of saying earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, go ahead and get us our next question.
Yes, we have a comment here. It says, loving the show so far. My question is, any advice for what you do when you get into an artist block and you can't find motivation to get started with art again?
Good question. We've all had that block before, right? So Kevin, Saumitra, how have you worked to overcome that moment where inspiration and motivation is hard to find?
I think there's, I'm sorry, go ahead, Saumitra.
I actually kind of find something else to work on, because, you know, when I work on something else, it kind of actually opens up something else for me. I also kind of, you know, try and do like a physical activity, like I go for a run sometimes, and then even that kind of helps me get over the block. A lot of the times I also kind of just sit with it and kind of just close my eyes and think over it, because I have felt that helps me kind of meditate and kind, you know, just think about it a lot more.
What's going on? Sorry. Sorry about that. My phone went off and it screwed up my computer. I was going to say that the poetry that is, you know, I think I totally lost my train of thought there. I don't have
We're
to
getting a
pass.
writer's block right now, right? We're seeing it in real time.
I know when you get a blockage, obviously. I'm not the type of a poet or writer that says, somebody will say, can you write a poem about this for me, please? I can't do that. Mine are emotionally and passionately driven. And so over the years, I write maybe 2 or 3 poems a year. And I've just read recently that there's an artist that actually is learning how to embrace when you're not being inspired and not be anxious about it. And that way it will come easier. So that's kind of how I just let it come when it comes. And then I can't stop.
Thank you for sharing a little bit. I know that's something we all experience, those moments when motivation is hard to find. And thank you for the question. Mark, go ahead and give us our next question or comment.
Yes. What was the impetus for the writing of Marriage Second or Marriage 2? The imagery of the piece is powerful. How did this piece come to be?
Well, the poem itself, I wrote for friends of mine's wedding many years ago. And that's as simple as that, because so it's their relationship, and because Marriage 2, because there is a Marriage 1 poem, but this is the one that we used. And I'll let Saumitra talk about the imagery on it.
So for the imagery of this poem, I was kind of thinking about 2 rivers coming together to form like a much larger river, and then how that much larger river goes and meets the sea. And I really wanted to kind of show that that kind of like coming together of 2 things and them forming like a one form. And that's how I was kind of thinking about it. We actually had a different color scheme when I first did it. It was very primary, and I remember talking to Kevin about it, and then we chose these tertiary colors for it because we just thought it gave it much more depth.
And if I may, about the poem itself, it is the poem, when people come together in some sort of commitment or a marriage, they are coming from 2 different worlds. And it is like 2 rivers coming together, and they decide to bring their waters together and their energy together to join, to go for one goal, which is the sea. And that's why I love that poem. I really liked it a lot.
Thank you, Amy, for that question and highlighting that particular piece for us. Mark, what's our next comment or question?
We have a comment from Lane Nixon. Thank you so much for sharing your process and your thoughts with us. The show is a love expression of tangible, intangible, and of the language that developed between the 2 of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you guys really did develop a little bit of a shorthand, I can imagine, as you're going back and forth.
Yeah, and you know, as we were talking about collaboration earlier, I wanted this to be a real collaboration. I did not want to just use Kevin poems and like not have and for him to not have any say in what the illustrations were. So you know, whenever I did any illustrations, I would we would kind of have a meeting about them. And then I would ask him to choose what his favorites were. And then kind of I would choose some. And then we would kind of have like a back and forth between each of us to choose like the illustration that we were going to use for a particular poem. And so I think we kind of like use the poem, just the first letter of the poem or like the first word of the poem to kind of refer to a poem quite a bit.
And as any artist knows, it's very easy to get distracted and to procrastinate. So we kind of kept each other going forward. We didn't push it, but we just made sure that we made appointments to talk about it, and we had our tasks to get done. And it almost was helpful that COVID came, because what else were we going to do? So we were able to.
Extra time for the studio or at the desk, right?
Right.
So if we don't have any more comments, I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you all for being here, and don't check out just yet. As the reception draws to a close, I want to highlight a special performance that was provided to us by HCC professor Melissa Steinhardt. Over the course of the exhibition, as you heard us talking about, we've had numerous visitors and class groups visit. And Melissa was inspired by the exhibition's theme of intimacy to create her own artistic response in the form of a spoken word performance. So we'll be sharing this while we play a slideshow of the images from the exhibition to conclude tonight's event. And so bittersweet to say this, that this is the close of the exhibition. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Saumitra, so very much for all of your time. Okay, go ahead, Kevin. Absolutely.
One more thing. I just want to say that you, Amanda and Emiliano, were just phenomenal. They were just wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful. They made it so easy. They made us feel so comfortable, and it was just like so organic. You guys do a great job. Thank you.
Yes, I wanted to really say thank you to both Emiliano and Amanda for working with us so well, and also kind of really providing a great opportunity for us to have this installation at Gallery 221. I remember when I had sent the proposal to Amanda, and her response was so wonderful that I wasn't expecting it. And I remember kind of calling Kevin and being like, hey, have you seen her response?
Well, it's been our pleasure to host this and have you both in the show. We've had such lovely responses from community members and, importantly, our students and our faculty. So those comments mean a lot, but it's you guys are the reason we're here, and to share this with our students and with the Tampa Bay area, and to shine a light on what wonderful people we have right here in our backyard. No need to go to New York and Chicago, right? Can't travel there anyway right now. Okay, so that will conclude. Again, hang out for that special performance pre-recorded by Melissa Steinhardt. And everyone, please be safe and be well. See you next time.
Thank you.
I'm trying to figure out how we arrived at this hurt. The first 8 months, we'd spend 15 minutes just deciding who'd hang up first. Cliche, picnics at the park. Cliche, watching sunsets till it got dark. You next to me whispering in my ear just the right things I like to hear. In, behind, I could use all types of prepositions, cause no matter what, baby, we'd find the right position. Waves of screaming, nothing in anger unless you count the angry knocks on the wall from our neighbors. And I'd say, close the windows, Poppy, this ain't nobody's business. And you reply with the quickness, running back, trying to embrace as much of this thickness. Thankfully, we both into fitness as hours come from the minutes. Our bodies reaching new limits. I may not be religious, but good Lord, can I get a witness? Remember that when the flower was still in bloom and we were still too self-conscious to use each other's bathrooms? That was then. Everything was clear cut. Now it's abstract. Instead of sweet nothings, we spewing words we can't retract. I'm wielding a black Sharpie trying to redact the last few years of my life. Cause now you won't even listen. You try to finish my sentences. We make more exits and entrances, making me reevaluate what my position on vengeance is. We said things we never tell anyone else. We told each other secrets, but I'd rather egress than live the rest of my life with regrets. Now everything is silence. No more knocks from next door. Then you try to make me jealous, make me want you more. Nah, that ain't me, money. I'm not waging petty battles while we try to fight a civil war. You know what? Let me rewind to what I said before. I know I was speaking in anger. Our times weren't all bad, and at the beginning, I'll admit that shit was a blast. But I had to learn a new language to sing the song of myself. I know now that intimacy can be heaven and just another circle of hell. But I discovered if I find myself in fire or ice more often than not, I just gotta bounce because I know we'll be much happier apart.
Affair of the heart. My brain, with all its reasoning ability, says no. My passion, which has the strength of two to touch and warm and soothe, says yes. My intelligence to weigh the pros and cons for practicality's sake says no. My emotions, which long to be let loose in a torrent of seawater, says yes. My needs as a man inform me that a woman is best and most fulfilling, and they say no. My heart, which desires love, understanding, warmth, says, I miss you. Infinite grace. There is no end to love, but only fear to blind us. Forward motion. A moment of truth pushed me toward you, with only the intention of learning who you were. The learning did not stop with just one encounter. Instead, you became closer with each new chapter, a novel that has no end, but a purpose to move the action forward. An invitation. May I be so bold to touch the door that locks away my heart, and lift the latch to see much more beyond the horse and cart. With eyes now cleansed of pointless fear, I reach well past the self, and hold on high a veil of tears to loose among the elves. A brave new soul is born anew to live and touch and grow, amid the words so tried and true, of which men fear to sow. So call my heart of love, I say, and let's go out and play. Love is. Love does not change. It neither grows nor does it fade away. We only open or close our eyes to what love really is. Marriage 2. Two strong streams unite to form a raging river that carves a path to the wide open sea together. Disappointment. I fell in love with who you were becoming, and then you stopped becoming. I will not quit you. For 30+ years I've known you. For 30+ years I've loved you. For 30+ years they said no. For 30+ years they said sin. For 30+ years I would not quit you. For 30+ years I gave you my all. For 30+ years God has blessed us. For 30+ years more I will love you. Jericho. I love the divine spirit you have hidden behind high, thick walls, but you do not, and so will not let me. Gone away. Going away parties are supposed to be fun. Going away parties are supposed to be sad. Going away parties are supposed to be filled with hope. But who said you could go away? And who said I could not? So you be sure to have the pillow fluffed, and you be sure to have the bed all warm, for I'll be seeing you soon enough, because I love you. My Muse. My muse looks into the souls of the spirits inhabiting this world and uses my emotions to pull out words to convey a truth we dare not face. For it may prove the fragile membrane between love and fear is not a weakness, as most would have us believe, but strength. Volcano. The intense emotions that rise out of me when I think of you, when I see you, have driven me to professional help